There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost, and he is found.'"
Let's pray this morning. Gracious God, this is your time to instruct our hearts, our minds, our very souls. Help us to find within your words a new challenge and a new day. Guide and instruct us in all your ways. Bless the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts. Might it be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Did you ever wonder why Jesus just didn't end the third story with the prodigal son's return from the celebration? Did you ever wonder what the older son did? He ends his story in a way that invites us to consider our response. Did the son join the celebration? Did he walk off angry? Did he run into the herd, grab another fatted calf, and start his own party with his own friends? Did he ever find forgiveness for the son, the brother, a family member? I'm assuming most of us here have family, and we know the difficulties of living with family. Things don't always go well. I see smiles. I'm not going to ask you stories about that brother of mine. I know my brothers and sisters have stories about me, but they don't have a microphone, so But isn't it interesting why Jesus ended his story with the conversation with the older son when he's asked the question, why do you hang with sinners and tax collectors? I came to the conclusion this week that I don't think there is any such thing as an older son. That in our association with the story, we're all to relate to the younger son, to being lost and being found, to have wandered away like a sheep, been lost like a coin, spent our time in wild living, and at some point wandered our way home or found our way back. The father says to the son, all that I have is yours. You have always been with me. Let's celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours, notice the interesting thing, the son, the older son's comment is, this son of yours. It's almost as if the older son has disowned the younger, right? And the father says, this brother of yours. Kind of indicating some tension within the family. I know it's hard to imagine that happens, but maybe in this story we can stretch our minds a little bit and go with Jesus on this one. What is it we know about the older brother from the second half of this text that Cassie read for us? Well, first of all, he's hardworking, right? In the midst of the party going out, he's out in the field, he's doing his job. He's loyal. I've been slaving for you for years and never disobeyed. He has respect for his father. I've never asked for anything. He's well respected by his father. Everything I have is yours. He certainly has knowledge and has gotten back to him how his brother has used the wealth that he took. We know that from that he's made a decision to disown his brother, this son of yours. We might conclude that the older brother's motives is jealousy at the attention and the celebration that is being shown to the younger son. I would imagine that if we could characterize him, we would say the older son is probably the one that always plays it safe, never takes any risk. The older son thought that doing the right thing would be recognized and rewarded before the other unrighteous one in his brother. And that last thought drove me to a book that I had read. Mitch Albom, a sports writer for the Detroit News, who wrote several spiritual books, is a Jew. And in his book, Have a Little Faith, he explains a story that, like many, he was raised in his synagogue, and his rabbi was his youth group leader, and he had a positive experience, but he kind of wandered off into the world. His rabbi, feeling his age and knowing that the sands in the hourglass of his life are running thin, asks Mitch a question. Would you do my eulogy at my funeral? Well, Mitch has been away for years, if not decades, and finds it an odd request that he would ask a wayward son back to have such an honor to represent Rabbi, who he calls Reb in his book. And through this, has kind of an epiphany in his adult years of this journey of faith again. Through the stories in the life of Reb as they reconnect in the last year. I don't think I'm ruining anything in the book to let you know Reb dies, and Mitch does his funeral. But through the book, that's one I would recommend for you. Mitch shares a lot of interesting stories of faith and journey and discovery. And then at the end of his book, when he's done writing what he said in his eulogy, there's a chapter that says epilogue. And in it, he shares these words. Oh, one last memory. This was not long before Reb had passed away. He was talking about heaven, and suddenly, for some reason, I got a notion. What if you only get 5 minutes with God? I asked. 5 minutes, he said. 5 minutes alone with the Lord, and then poof, off you go to whatever happens next. And in those 5 minutes, he asked, kind of intrigued. Yes, in those 5 minutes, you can ask for anything you want. Ah, okay, Rev said. He pushed back in his chair as if consulting the air around him. First, I would say, do me a favor, God in heaven. If you can find the members of my family who need help, please show them the way on earth and guide them a little. Okay? That's a minute. Okay? The next 3 minutes I'd say to the Lord, Lord, give these to someone who's suffering and requires your love and counsel and compassion. You would give up 3 minutes, I asked, if someone truly needs it? Yep. Okay, I said, by my calculation, that still leaves you with 1 minute. All right, in the final minute, I would say, Lord, look, I've done X amount of good stuff on earth. I've tried to follow your teachings and to pass them on. I've loved my family, I've been a part of the community, and I've been, I think, fairly good to people. So, Heavenly Father, for all this, what is my reward? I smiled and said, what did you think he'll say? He thought and laughed for a minute. He'd say, I think, reward? What reward? That's what you were supposed to do. And we laughed, and the laughter filled the air. What do you think God would say? Let's go back and understand the gravity and insanity of the story of the prodigal son that's lost. First, the younger son goes and asks for his inheritance. First of all, that is unheard of in the Jewish community. The assumption is Jesus is talking amongst his peeps here, that we're talking about a family, a patriarch and 2 sons. A son would never demand, it's almost dishonoring the father's life and his leadership in the family, to ever ask for the inheritance, let alone the father, instead of punishing the son, giving him 1/3 of the estate. Now, I don't have it in the text, but I believe it's heavily implied. Maybe you're in a different place, but I believe the son sold that property outside the Jewish faith because he wanted the money, which is a violation of the law. This was God's gift, God's land that he gave to his people, and you were to keep it within the family. That's why you passed it down from generation to generation. And all the while, the father who has been burned, if the rumors are true that get back to the older son, I'm sure they've gotten back to the father, but every day he stands and waits. He doesn't chase. He doesn't seek after. He doesn't send slaves off, right? We know he has slaves. We know he must be rich. The son comes back to want to be one of his own slaves. We know that the younger son has come to the conclusion he has no place left in this family. He's weakened future generations, and yet the father waits. And notice the text. When he sees him a far way off, the father runs. Author Philip Yancey, in his book, What's So Amazing About Grace, and devotes an entire chapter to the story, and he names it the outrageousness or the audacity of grace. And in it, he shares sentiments and articles from an article he posted in Christianity Today magazine, in which he talked about the fact that Jesus in these 3 parables talks about an owning up to, an absent-mindedness, right? And a risk-taking that no one would take. For instance, the shepherd. If you had 99 sheep left and you left them to chase after the one, what would happen to the 99? Leaving them vulnerable. If you took the risk, you certainly wouldn't call your friends together and say, hey, here's the insane thing that I did, and I found the sheep. Of course, we're never told whether any of the other 99 were lost again when he got back. A person who lost a tenth of their wealth, stayed up all night cleaning their place to finally find it, wouldn't throw a party to talk about the fact that they had lost this, let alone a father whose son had squandered the entire estate. Would never call for a celebration, but in the joy of the heart of the moment, rationale is out the door and the father's love carries on. Is there any one of us that hear the words and the claim in our life, "You have always been with me, and everything I have is yours"? Is there such a thing as the older son in the world? Let's remember how the chapter starts before Jesus starts his conversation about these three. In the beginning of the 15th chapter, it says, "All the tax collectors and sinners were gathering around Jesus to listen to him. The Pharisees and the legal experts were grumbling, saying, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" Jesus told them this parable. Suppose I think Jesus decided to set them up. In the story of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son, those who knew the law and the fact that by doing the right thing and following the law, that's where your reward came, was the message. But Jesus says, now wait a minute. There was an older son who had always done the right thing, who had followed the law and rejected the celebration. Is there any one of us today that could assert the claim, "I've always done the right thing. I've always been with the Father, and from the very beginning, all that God has always been mine"? I think he leaves the story open because it's a reminder of how the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, the religious elite of the day, the lesson they forgot. There is nothing we can do, but it's only by God that we can receive this gift of grace. We love to hear the story of the prodigal son. Do we hear the warning of the older son? Or do we at times, in the glow of grace, in the promise of eternal salvation, ignore the lost in our community, in our families? We all have one in our life who has strayed away, and I believe is still straying away. Have we paused in our day to pray for them? To pray that they would come to the revelation the younger son came to in unworthiness and come home? Have we begged like the woman who says even the dog gets the crumbs around the table when she asked Jesus to heal her daughter? Do we find ourselves the righteous ones sitting around the table, or the woman anointing Jesus' feet with perfume and drying them with our hair? Friends, when we believe we've done something to earn it, we've just weakened grace. Its power, its impact, and its grasp. And the journey of faith isn't a discovery of who gets in and who doesn't, because I think we're all going to be shocked when we get there. I believe the basic message of Scripture is none of us deserve it, but all of us who say yes can it. But in saying yes, we have to come to the place that the younger son came to. Lord, I am not worthy. But suppose I accept. Suppose I give my life to you. Suppose I let you be Lord. Not just for a day, not just in a situation, but in each breath. Then what? I don't know about you, but I know I'm still wrestling with the question, is there anyone who can really, truly claim to be the older son? Maybe some of us haven't strayed as far away, but I believe all of us need to come to the place in our life in which we admit again that we can't do it alone, we can't go it alone, and we are unworthy. And in that moment, we can experience grace anew. When we hear that voice, you are my beloved, we can feel the power of the grip of embrace once again. We can see the Father at a distance off, watching us turn the corner, rushing with open arms, ready to confess and to hear the Father say, let's forget about all that. Welcome home again. Or we can choose to live a life believing that we have been faithful enough, that we can do to earn it, and unfortunately find ourselves on the outside, faithful to a fault. That living in faith is living in trust, and entrusting ourselves into the care, once again, of God. When we stumble, realizing He's ready to pick us up, dust us off, and get us back on the road. Is there any such thing, any such person as an older son? I don't know. Maybe we can talk about that over coffee today. Hey, let's pray as the band comes forward to lead us in praise music this morning. Gracious and holy God, we thank you. We thank you first and foremost for the selflessness of your Son, for giving and giving and giving, for becoming one of us and going to a cross. We thank you for your willingness to be sacrificial in all, for us, the lost. Help us to find the ways in which we have sorted out those as worthy and unworthy. Open our eyes to the ways in which we've been blind to our own need and the strength of your love. Guide and renew us that we might celebrate again the soul that comes home, that lives eternally with you. And all God's children said, Rise.